In this video, you're going to learn how I lost 14 pounds in weight and 5 inches off my waistline in 7 months whilst eating the foods I enjoyed and without spending a penny on any special products or services. Now, this presentation is actually a cut down version of one I delivered across a number of seminars throughout 2018, and it covers what I consider to be the fundamental aspects of intermittent fasting. Let's start off by looking at a small selection of the potential benefits to be had from intermittent fasting. Now, there's far too many for me to be able to cover in a reasonable amount of time, and there are some which I have no personal experience with, so I'm just going to focus on just those which have been relevant to me. That said, I do encourage you to do your own research if you see anything on this list which resonates with you. And let me tell you how I got into intermittent fasting. Now, up until my 30s, I'd always been able to get away with eating whatever I liked and still be fairly lean as I was very active. Now, all of that changed when I became a parent in 2011. Suddenly, spending time on my health wasn't as high on my list of priorities, which resulted in me gaining some weight as well as inches around my waist. In 2015, I was invited for a routine health check offered to every UK citizen who turns 40 years old, and it's carried out by our wonderful National Health Service. But it actually took me another 2 years before I felt I was in a physical state which better represented my true self and could then go for that test. By that time, my second daughter had been born, so it was even more difficult to find time to invest in my health. But late in 2016, I started working out regularly again and put more effort into watching what I was eating. So, in 2017, January, I went for that health check, the low light of which was being diagnosed as pre-diabetic and with elevated cholesterol. And this is such a blow because I've been making a good effort to work out and eat healthily, so this news hit me kind of hard, but it also wasn't totally unexpected since I have a family history of type 2 diabetes. Now, after that, I started hitting the gym 5 days a week. Fortunately, I had access to a gym at my workplace, so I was able to exercise during my lunchtime without taking up any family time. I also made sure I ate frequent meals throughout the day in an effort to keep my blood sugar levels constant because that was the popular advice at the time. By July 2017, at a follow-up health check, my blood sugars were back into a healthy range, but my cholesterol was still high. So I continued training and trying to eat healthily with little success as my waistline continued to expand to its biggest ever size at over 36 inches. I actually stopped measuring at that point, but my trousers felt increasingly uncomfortable as the months went by. After years of trying various diets, I was at a complete loss, and by November 2017, I'd read some articles about intermittent fasting and decided to give it a try. After all, I had nothing to lose besides, well, body fat. By December 2017, I was 5 weeks into the 16-8 intermittent fasting protocol. I was 6 pounds lighter and 3 inches smaller around my waist. I was both amazed at my progress over such a short period of time and also at how easy it had been to achieve it. By June 2018, I was 7 months in, I was 14 pounds lighter and 5.5 inches smaller around the waist than when I'd started. By the 12-month mark in November 2018, I was 16 pounds lighter and had shrunk my waist by 6 inches overall. I had another health check, and not only were my blood sugars still in the healthy range, but my cholesterol was too. So what is fasting? Well, fasting is the voluntary abstinence from food for a period of time. If fluids are also abstained from, then it's considered to be a dry fast, but that's outside of the scope of what we're talking about here. Intermittent fasting is fasting, but it's explicitly telling you that it's done intermittently. You start and you stop at intervals rather than doing it for a prolonged period of time. Now, what surprises a lot of people who are new to the concept of fasting is that they're probably already doing it, and that includes you. Almost everybody already does intermittent fasting on a daily basis, or rather I should say nightly basis, because unless you eat during your sleep, then you're going to be entering a fasted state. whereby your body has fully digested and absorbed the last food you consumed. At that point, your body is being fueled by food energy which has been previously stored, and you are in a fasted state. Generally speaking, at any given point in time, the body is either in a fed or a fasted state. A fed state is when nutrients are or have recently been extracted from food, but once the last meal consumed has long been digested, then the body turns to its stores in order to satisfy its energy needs. Once you get to this point, the body is considered to be in a fasted state. Now, being in a fasted state means that your body has the opportunity to tap into energy reserves, such as body fat, to use as fuel. If losing body fat is something you want to achieve, then a fasted state is your friend. Is intermittent fasting safe? Well, as long as our species has existed, which is something in the region of 300,000 years, fasting has also existed. It is not a new dietary technique which has been developed by dietitians or fitness celebrities, but it's a name which is given to a process of eating and not eating to which our bodies have adapted to over many millennia. Now, awareness about intermittent fasting is growing, but it's facing up against some very substantial marketing budgets. If you're fasting, you're probably not eating as much. If you're not eating as much, then you're not buying as much, and that's not in the best interest of big food businesses. Now, like all good science, medical science doesn't stay constant. Do you remember when low fat was popular back in the 1980s? Well, nowadays we appreciate that there are essential fats which the body cannot function without, and that it's refined sugar which is the bigger health risk to the general population. Now, for most people, intermittent fasting ought to be safe. However, there seems to be a general consensus that certain groups, such as children, the elderly, women who are trying to conceive or are pregnant or are breastfeeding, anybody being treated for blood sugar disorders, anybody with an eating disorder, and those who are considered underweight should not practice intermittent fasting. Those who are heavily stressed or sleep deprived may find intermittent fasting more difficult than others, so maybe sort those issues out first. You should seek qualified medical advice before embarking on intermittent fasting. What I'm presenting to you here is not that advice. Now, I'm not a doctor, but my own research is based upon information from those who are. The likes of Dr. Jason Fung have been instrumental in my intermittent fasting journey, and I'd highly recommend that you look him up for more information about intermittent fasting. His books, The Complete Guide to Fasting and The Obesity Code, are essential reading in my opinion, and I'll include links in the description for you to get your own copies. There's also a growing number of research studies around the effects of intermittent fasting being published, as well as people who summarise these studies into a more accessible form for everyday people like me. As well as my own experience, I'm fortunate to be in contact both online and in real life with many other people practicing intermittent fasting, and this gives me a great opportunity to collate experience from practitioners in many walks of life. Now, as I said earlier, intermittent fasting isn't a new thing, and there have been many people throughout our recorded history who've practiced fasting. And these include Hippocrates, a Greek physician who was born in 460 BC, who is also known as the father of modern medicine, and he is quoted to have said that our food should be our medicine and our medicine should be our food. To eat when you are sick is to feed your sickness. Fasting was also practiced by Gandhi, and he was quoted as saying that a genuine fast cleanses the body, mind and soul. In the Christian Bible, you'll see a quote, "Satan and his plagues may be cast out only by fasting and by prayer." Now, Ramadan first started around 610 AD, and there are 1.8 billion Muslims in the world today who fast from sunrise to sunset every day for a month, every year of their adult lives. Let's look at more recent times. There are other people who you may have heard of who have also practiced fasting, such as this gentleman, Hugh Jackman, who used 16/8 daily intermittent fasting as part of his preparation for the 2013 film Wolverine. And in 2003, magician David Blaine completed a 44-day water fast while suspended above the River Thames. In 1966, Angus Barbieri, a 26-year-old man from Scotland, completed a 382-day fast and dropped from 32 stone to 12 stone. You also have the likes of Ronda Rousey, the multiple UFC champion, has also used intermittent fasting in preparation for fights. And then there are my friends, family and colleagues who have also found success with intermittent fasting. First off, we have Adam, who is an experienced endurance athlete and is using intermittent fasting to take his fitness to another level. He's told me that he's lost body fat, and as a runner his pace has improved a lot, his base resting heart rate is also reduced and his heart recovery rate is much better. He feels much sharper mentally and he sleeps better, and he doesn't have to worry about sticking to a specific diet. Biggest health boost he's had for a very long time. Andy is a middle-aged dad like myself who was facing similar health issues, and he said just been diagnosed as diabetic and had high cholesterol. He's seen his weight drop from 82 to 74.7 kilos. He feels more alert and energized during the day, and his energy levels are a lot higher. He feels like he's had a new lease of life. We also have Carl, another middle-aged dad. He said that he's shed 5 kilos of fat and trimmed 3 inches off his waist, and he's in his best shape of his life. He loves the simplicity of intermittent fasting and it fits in with his lifestyle. And the beauty of it is that it's sustainable. It's not a diet and he can pretty much eat whatever he wants. You have my training partner Ben, who has told me that he's seen a massive improvement in his overall shreddedness. He got great ab definition and he feels more alert and more awake in the mornings. And you also have Charlotte, who told me that she's lost a stone in weight since she started intermittent fasting and hasn't experienced any migraines either. In addition to these guys, I've had countless people tell me how they've been able to adopt intermittent fasting as part of their lifestyles and been able to lose weight that they've not been able to shift before and keep it off with ease. So it's widely accepted that in order to lose weight, specifically body fat, we need to maintain a calorie deficit, which is when your body expends more calories than what you take in. But if it was just a case of eating less and moving more, then losing and maintaining weight should be easy and there wouldn't be as many dieting products and plans as there are out there today. The problem with typical low calorie or calorie restricted diets is that they focus on restricting the energy intake without setting up your body to be able to access body fat stores to make up for that deficit. When your body cannot get access to sufficient energy either from food or from stored energy sources from within itself, it responds by slowing down the metabolism and increasing the desire for more energy-rich foods. Hence, the cravings start. Now, medium-term diets, which are followed for weeks or maybe months, can be difficult to sustain. And after a while, it can seem like the effort required outweighs the benefits, and so people tend to give up. A lot of short-term diets, crash diets or cleanses, capitalize on this by making sure that they are only followed for a few days, after which you come off the diet and any weight which has been lost is soon regained. Let's look at some well-known diet fails. In 2015, a study was conducted which looked at the weight loss success of 175,000 obese men and women over a 9-year period. This study found that the success rate was an abysmal 0.8% for women and less than 0.5% for men. That means it's an over 99% failure rate where people have regained all of their lost weight. Launched in 1993, the Women's Health Initiative, which is a long-term national health study focused on postmenopausal women, studied the health of 160,000 women aged between 50 and 79. 50,000 of those women reduced their calorie intake and increased their activity levels. Over 7.5 years, the net weight loss was an average of less than 2 pounds across that entire group. A study was carried out 6 years after season 8 of America's Biggest Loser in 2009. It was revealed that 14 of the 16 contestants regained all of their lost weight with 4 of them gaining even more than when they'd entered the show. Dieting may work as long as you stay on a diet, but if you're looking for lifelong results, then you need to consider a lifestyle change which will enable those results. So how does your body store energy? Well, when we eat food, our digestive systems break it down to its constituent macronutrients, and from the carbohydrates we experience a surge of glucose in our bloodstream. The body responds to this increase in blood glucose by releasing insulin into the bloodstream. Now, insulin is the key which unlocks the body's energy stores and allows glucose to be transported from the bloodstream and into the liver and muscles, initially to be stored as glycogen, which is a form of easily accessible carbohydrate. Now, once glycogen stores are full, then the remaining blood glucose is stored as fat around the body. The amount of energy our bodies can store as glycogen depends on the size of our livers and the amount of muscle that we have. Our fat cells, however, can store almost a limitless amount of energy. Let's take a closer look at insulin and its role in energy storage. Now, the human body has been evolving for over 300,000 years, and agriculture has only existed in the last 20,000 years. So for over 95% of the time that we have existed as a species, our bodies have become efficient at thriving in a hunter-gatherer society in which food was not as readily available as it is today. Our bodies have evolved to become very proficient at storing away any excess food energy as body fat for times when food was not available. Now, as I said in a previous slide, the body releases insulin in response to a rise in blood glucose levels. The amount of insulin released will be proportionate to the rise in blood glucose. Now, carbohydrates cause the highest peaks of blood glucose and insulin, followed by protein and then fat. One thing to note is that even though as blood sugar levels drop, the insulin levels continue to fall to baseline levels a lot slower. The entire process can take several hours to complete. When your body's in a fasted state, then it needs to tap into its energy stores. Now, the first port of call is the glycogen which has been stored in your liver and muscles, but once that's gone, then the body will attempt to break down body fat and then use that for energy. The potential problem that we have here is that if insulin levels are above the baseline levels, we will actually be prevented from breaking down fat for energy. This means our bodies cannot use fat for energy within a few hours of eating a carbohydrate heavy meal. So in order to be in a position whereby our bodies can burn body fat for energy, we need 2 things. 1 is to deplete glycogen stores, and 2 is to have baseline levels of insulin in our bloodstream. Now, from an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. If we've recently eaten a meal and blood glucose levels are high, then there's no need for our bodies to break down body fat for energy. Body fat is an energy reserve, which the body will hold on to until more readily accessible energy sources are no longer available. When we look at a typical day for somebody who eats breakfast, lunch and dinner with snacks in between, we can see multiple blood glucose and the corresponding insulin spikes throughout the day. If we're looking to lose body fat, then that's realistically not going to start happening until the early hours of the morning, and even then only for a few hours. Now, this was less of an issue back in the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s, when eating 3 meals a day with less acceptance of snacking was the norm. Gradually though, the message that eating more frequently throughout the day was better for us became more prevalent. Whilst this is great for businesses which stand to profit from our constant grazing, it's not so great for our bodies, which experience more time with elevated insulin levels. Not only does this make it more difficult for us to burn body fat, but our bodies also build up a resistance to insulin over time, which means we have to release even more insulin in order to have the same effect. Now, insulin resistance is one of the causes of type 2 diabetes, which we've seen is on a rampant increase across the industrialized world, which is great news again for pharmaceuticals, but not so great for the health of the general population. Is intermittent fasting any better than a calorie restricted diet when it comes to weight loss? Well, there are people who will tell you that intermittent fasting provides no benefit over a calorie-restricted diet. But research studies have proved that periods of fasting can bring about benefits which calorie restriction alone cannot provide. Crucially, with intermittent fasting, your body gets a period of time with no insulin spikes which otherwise would occur whenever you eat food. This means that your body's sensitivity to insulin can be restored, and the body is set up to be able to break down body fat for energy. It's not only our insulin sensitivity which is corrected, but intermittent fasting reduces feelings of hunger, which makes it effortless to fast for the majority of the day. More recently, it was discovered that the body's own ability to recycle old and damaged cells, a process known as autophagy, could be stimulated by fasting, and the 2016 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was awarded for work in identifying this vital process which can have benefits in preventing diseases such as Parkinson's, type 2 diabetes, inflammation, and even cancer. Now, none of these benefits are available without fasting. So don't let anybody tell you that intermittent fasting is no better than simple calorie restriction. It is so much more. Intermittent fasting is different from a typical low-calorie diet because, unlike most diets, there's nothing to buy. There's no shakes, there's no powders or pills or subscriptions to pay for. In fact, I actually save money by skipping breakfast. And intermittent fasting requires no effort. I don't have to spend any time doing intermittent fasting. In fact, I save time by not having to prepare or queue up to buy or eat breakfast. There's no counting of calories or tracking of macros. I just eat and don't eat. And when it comes time for me to eat, I eat until I'm satisfied, whereas previously I've tried to restrict carbohydrates. With intermittent fasting, I place no food restrictions onto myself at all. And because intermittent fasting is a long-term lifestyle choice rather than a short-lived diet, occasional blips or deviations won't have a significant impact over the long run. Intermittent fasting won't necessarily slow down your metabolism, and lean muscle tissue is preserved as your body can tap into fat stores for any additional energy it requires. Ultimately, intermittent fasting can be a successful strategy for long-term weight management because it's flexible and sustainable. So how do you actually do intermittent fasting, I hear you ask? Well, it's actually quite straightforward, as you don't have to buy anything and you don't need to do anything in order to get started. The basic approach is to split your 24-hour day into two, a number of hours off of fasting and a number of hours off of feeding. Now, each of these fasting or feeding windows is made up of a number of contiguous hours depending on the intermittent fasting protocol that you decide to follow. Let's say, for example, that you choose to do the 16-8, which is a very popular protocol, and it's one I mostly do myself. You fast for 16 hours each day, and then you do your eating within the remaining 8 hours. Now, that doesn't mean that you graze for those 8 hours. A better approach would be to eat meals which both satisfy your hunger as well as your body's nutritional needs. As for the 16 hours of fasting, if you include your 8 hours of sleeping, then it's just a matter of not consuming any calories in the 4 hours before you go to bed and the 4 hours after you wake up. Simply put, don't eat anything after dinner and skip breakfast in the morning. And this is exactly what I do. But Monday to Friday, I'll do a workout fasted, and then I'll break my fast with a post-workout meal. In the evening, I'll have dinner and be done with eating by around 8 o'clock. Although the focus is not on counting calories or tracking macros, a shorter feeding window naturally encourages less food to be consumed, especially if you're eating until you reach satiety at each meal with nutrient-dense foods. Now, during your fasting window, you should be avoiding anything with calories or artificial sweeteners. Water, green tea, and black coffee are usually safe choices. They keep you hydrated and help you control your hunger. If the first few days are difficult, then just gradually build up your fasting window day by day until you reach your desired fasting duration. Now, it's important to remember that intermittent fasting isn't magic. If you consistently overindulge during your eating window, then you will likely see a weight gain. It's down to the individual to find out what level of consumption works for them. Now, intermittent fasting is not a food type restriction, and so can be applied in conjunction with the likes of keto or veganism or vegetarianism, etc. So the takeaway from all of this is that eating food spikes insulin, and insulin prevents fat burning. Fasting allows the body to use up glycogen stores and then tap into body fat. Now, intermittent fasting brings about numerous benefits, as well as maintaining a calorie deficit easier by helping you structure your eating in a way which is synergistic with how your body has evolved. Being able to fit intermittent fasting into your lifestyle is what makes it sustainable over the long term. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and it's inspired you to learn more about intermittent fasting. If so, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel to see more videos about intermittent fasting and other wellbeing topics. If you're on Instagram, check me out at Will's Wellbeing. If you have any questions, comments or feedback on this particular video, then please feel free to leave them below. See you next time.